Montreal Canadiens on their way to Calgary when they take on the Flames on Wednesday night. They'll take on the Oilers at Edmonton on Thursday night. They'll take on the Canucks in Vancouver on Saturday night. And next week on Tuesday, they're going to visit the Kraken in Seattle. A lot of questions going into Calgary. Number one, about Nazem Kadri of the Calgary Flames. We're going to talk to Craig Button about him, and Pierre LeBrun will also make his debut on the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro. And we're also going to talk to Pierre about Nazem Kadri. The Montreal Canadiens took on the Buffalo Sabres last night, and of course, Tage Thompson, his name keeps on coming up. We'll talk to Pierre LeBrun about him as well. Sidney Crosby and Team Canada, we'll talk to Pierre about him. Mike Matheson and the Montreal Canadiens, we'll talk to Craig about him. We're going to talk about Marty St. Louis, who Jeff Gorton praised like you can't believe on Amazon Prime. We're talking all of that. The Montreal Canadiens have a record of 5 wins and 2 losses, doing pretty good in the division, doing pretty good in the conference. Are the Canadiens going to be able to surpass the 100-point mark? I'll ask both Craig and Pierre that same question. It's the Sick Podcast. It's coming up in just a couple of minutes. I'm Marinaro.
It's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, 'cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick Podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, 'cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K, S-I-C-K, S-I-C-K, S-I-C-K, S-I-C-K.
all in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro,
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur. Oh!
the sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Stanley pour les Canadiens, le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs!
And all together they work
worked a young team to the top. And now a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida TB. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro, the Sick Podcast on this Tuesday, October 21st in the new studios on Isabey Street in beautiful Ville Saint-Laurent. And it's not often that we'll have English podcasts from here. Actually, you know what? It might be quite often. It might be something. It's something that we've already started to discuss. Maybe not after Montreal Canadiens games, but when the Canadiens aren't playing, maybe more often than not, we will actually have shows from the new studios, because after the looks of this studio, more and more people are telling us, well, I wish you could do even some of the English shows live from that studio as well. So we're going to try and give you as much as possible. We got a busy one today. Craig Button is around the corner, of course, with TSN, their hockey analyst and their director of scouting, and also with the TSN and The Athletic, as well as other publications and other networks. Pierre LeBrun will make his Sick Podcast debut, and I am very much looking forward to that. That'll take place in probably about 25 minutes time from now, but I think we have a good 25 or 30 minutes with Craig Button. So without further ado, let's bring him in. Craig Button, ladies and gentlemen.
Craig Button, presented by Souvlaki Authentique. Bring the taste of Greece home.
And Montreal knows good food, but nothing hits like Souvlaki Authentique. Every stick of souvlaki is marinated fresh. Every pita is stacked with flavor, and the potatoes twice fried and finished. That signature lemon sauce. This is comfort food, Greek-style, family-run, flavor-packed, and proud to serve Montreal. Go to souvlakiauthentique.com to find your nearest location and bring the taste of Greece home. Craig Button, how are you?
Well, I don't know how much I'm going to be able to talk, because I'm just salivating thinking about those Greek lemon potatoes. They're so good.
They are very, very good. They are.
You know, everything's good there, but there's something special about those. And I try to make Greek potatoes, and I do an okay job, but Souvlaki Authentique, I mean, bottom line, they're top notch.
Is there something special about the Montreal Canadiens, who after 7 games with a record of 5-2 sit second in the division, third in the conference? Craig, it was probably about a year ago. Some were getting a little bit excited on the Montreal Canadiens, and they thought the Canadiens, it wouldn't be that much longer before they were out of the rebuild. And you said, hold on a second, let's relax. We've had a chance to digest things now. They're 4 years into that rebuild that probably came to an end when they made the playoffs last year. You got to hand it to Marty St. Louis. Even though they lost their last preseason game this season, he said, you know what? I like what I saw from my team in the preseason. The guys are all in. I really love the engagement. This is the best preseason we've had since I've been here, and I'm very, very optimistic about the start of the season. He couldn't be more right. A record of 5-2, Craig.
No, and he couldn't be more right. And, you know, Marty came into the team in the spring of 2022. And so the team was in flux, you know, players in, players out, as Jeff and Kent were trying to work the roster, and they were trying to work the salary cap, take advantage of their salary cap room and maneuver. At the same time, Marty's trying to get a team out on the ice that can function well together, knowing. And Marty knew a number of the players were not going to be there, but he also knew that he had some really good young players that were going to be the foundation of what we see with the Montreal Canadiens now. So you come into this year, you come into the preseason, and Marty now working with a team. He's working with a group of players that are part of the foundation, not only the key players, but also other players that are ready to come in and contribute to the team. And that's very different for Marty St. Louis coming in this year as last year. And I think that when you look at what they did over the course of last year, specifically qualifying for the playoffs, after Jeff Molson had said we want to be in the mix, well, they did better than me in the mix. And this year, they're building on that. And I think that that's a really good positive thing for the Montreal Canadiens, for the players, for the team, for the fans. And you're right. I mean, 2021, they were in the Stanley Cup final versus the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah.
We talk rebuilds. Rebuilds are not easy to do. You can have a plan, but you got to execute it. I would suggest that in October of 2025, this plan has been executed brilliantly.
Speaking of the plan was put together and executed in part by Jeff Gorton, president of hockey operations of the Montreal Canadiens. He was on Amazon Prime last night, and let's hear Jeff Gorton on Martin St. Louis.
I believe Marty's a huge part of what we're doing. I think that they've taken on his personality, his coaching style. He is definitely a player-friendly guy. He likes to play a skilled game. I think that around the league, people are taking notice of how he wants to play and how we're playing, and I think that's going to be good for us.
I wanted to ask you, you talked about Marty St. Louis, and you can talk about the talent and the players and everything, but it seems like this group has built a culture and an identity. Last year, getting that first step into getting into playoffs, but now there's a belief there. How important is that culture and identity that not only yourself, Ken Hughes, and Marty St. Louis are building, but the team itself? Yeah, no question. Last year in the beginning of the year, we didn't have a great start, and we felt like our players took ownership of it. The accountability piece came from them more than coaches, more than management, and I feel like that's kind of a turning point for us so far. So hopefully as we head into the season with a good start, we can carry it over and keep this thing going.
I want to go back to Marty. Years ago, he auditioned with me at ESPN for the World Cup of Hockey. I always remind him he could have been an analyst. Instead, he's found his calling behind the bench. He could run for mayor of Montreal, Gortz. He's such a likable guy. He's unbelievable.
No question. He's tremendously popular anywhere he goes. He's very good with his time too, and he's earned it. He's earned it. Everywhere he's been, I like to say, everyone's, what's Marty like? Marty's good at everything he does, and he always believes in himself, and I think our team is feeling that too.
All right, fun stuff. You've been here 4 years now. Best place to get smoked meat?
Oh, I can't say one. I'll never be allowed into any other. So any place you go for smoked meat in Montreal is a winner.
Okay, duck the question. I'll try another one. Poutine. Yeah. Best place.
Poutine. I'm going to give you the same answer. I have to eat. Look at me. I have to eat in this town.
Staying healthy.
Yeah.
All right. How about the time we spent 2023 D-backs Rangers? We watched a World Series game together.
We did.
Who do you like tonight? Jays?
Love the Jays tonight. Yeah, absolutely. Bring the Expos back too, right?
Absolutely. It's just great to see what you've done here in Montreal. Listen, you were with the Rangers so many years, Montreal as well. Do you ever pinch yourself? Original 6 franchises, you've been a big part of them, Jeff.
No, I mean, as I was in Boston and then New York, you're saying original 6, what's the next one? Definitely didn't think Montreal. I'm glad that it all worked out, but it's been fun. It's been a great place to play. The organization's unbelievable. We have a great owner. Right now everything's going really well.
There you have it. That was Jeff Gorton yesterday during the broadcast, or right before the game, I believe it was, on Amazon Prime. He was very, very good, very smart, as you can see. Craig, I know you are the president of the Marty St. Louis fan club. Made that very clear to us on more than one occasion. Of course, you had him in Calgary. Didn't last very long, but you are not surprised by the success that he's had as a head coach in the National Hockey League. It's unbelievable to think that he is the 5th senior head coach in the National Hockey League. Craig, I don't know what that says about the profession, but he's going to be 5 years. Pardon me, he's going to be 4 years on the job in, I think, on the 9th or 10th of February. It'll be 4 years then, and he's the 5th senior head coach in the National Hockey League. Your thoughts on what Jeff Gorton had to say? Basically, he's crediting Marty with all the success that this team is having.
Well, I think it's collaborative, and Jeff will defer. That's just Jeff's style in terms of recognizing other people and their contributions. But Marty will tell you, Kent will tell you, Jeff Molson will tell you, it's a collaborative effort, and they're not the only ones. There's so many others that are a big part of the success, and Marty understands that. It was interesting when Jeff said, yeah, he likes to play a skill game. Well, I mean, skill is really important. It's imperative to having success in the National Hockey League. But Marty also emphasizes hard skill. And there's a big difference between soft skill and hard skill. Marty was hard skill. His team that won in Tampa Bay, hard skill. It wasn't like, there's lots of players with skill. But Marty says, listen, I'm going to let you be skilled, but you better be hard when hard is required. Is there a better example than 3-2 on Monday night? Okay, and the Montreal Canadiens are up against Buffalo, and who blocks the shot? It's the captain. It's Nick Suzuki, and then it goes off the boards. He clears it, and Jake Evans puts it in the empty. That's hard skill. And you talk about a culture and everything that's in place. I mean, it gets instilled. Like you can't just say, okay, players be accountable. You have to give them the responsibility, guide them along. And I think that that's exactly what Marty has done. I think that he believes in people. He's patient with people. At the same time, he puts expectations on people. And I think that becomes really, really key in terms of pushing your team and pushing individual players to a higher level. Only one disappointment that I have in Jeff. Schwartz's is the best place to get smoked meat. Nobody's ever going to be able to tell me otherwise. I know there's other places for good smoked meat, don't get me wrong. But Schwartz's is the go-to place. I will make sure Adnan knows that. And I say this about poutine. Poutine, just as long as you get it within the borders of Quebec, you're doing pretty good. My favorite place, though, is the arena in Victoriaville. When I'm going to Victoriaville, I tell you what, I don't eat that day because I'm getting the big poutine in Victoriaville. It's that good.
There's a pretty good poutine in Victoriaville. There's a pretty good poutine in Drummondville, and there's a pretty good spots in Montreal. A few pretty good spots in Montreal that I poutine too. But I have to tell you a funny story. We were at the Sir Winston Churchill pub, which I'm sure you know very well as well, on Crescent Street in downtown Montreal a couple of nights ago after the Canadiens and the Rangers, and I was there with Pierre Maguire. Pardon me, Pierre Maguire joined me at a distance, but Simon the Snake Boisvert was next to me. He does some scouting with the Gatineau Olympique, and he was there. And the owner of Sir Winston Churchill Pub is also the owner of Schwartz's Smoked Meat. So at the end of the night, at around 10:45, 10:50 p.m., when we were doing the Habs post-game show, they showed up with a box, and there was probably about, I don't know, a good 40 sandwiches of Schwartz's smoked meat, and they were throwing them around to everyone that was in the establishment. So it was a big hit on Saturday night. The Schwartz's smoked meat was, but
as it should be. Let me tell you too. And if I have one disappointment, it's that Ben's closed. Ben's used to be a heck of a spot.
Yeah, it was. Speaking of skill, you brought up the word skill. Yesterday, we saw a display of it at various times during the game. There was a sequence of about 30 seconds where Ivan Demidov and Lane Hutson decided to play a game of keep away. It looked like two 20-year-olds on Beaver Lake playing against 7-year-olds, and the 7-year-olds couldn't touch the puck from the 20-year-olds. But at one point, somebody was able to get a stick on it. It was defenseman Samuelson for Buffalo that got a stick on a pass from Hutson to Demidov, that if he would have completed that pass, they probably would have finished off the play and completed the goal. We're going to see that for probably a decade.
It's brilliant. I mean, what you have is two players that have brilliant minds. You know, they see things that are possible. They don't see things that are right there in front of everybody else that are obvious to everybody. They see things that they see possibility. Isn't that what imagination is? We need imagination. We need imagination in the game. We don't need the same old. The same old is what it is. It's not that it's old or that it's bad, but when you see two players, and Lane Hutson is brilliant, and Ivan Demidov is brilliant in terms of their imaginations. And so when they go to work together, and to me, it's like two brains that are locked in together on the same wavelength. And then they have the high-end skill. But let me just talk about this. They also have the hard skill. Like Ivan Demidov on the goal that Kapanen scored, skill is using your skill and driving inside. He drove it inside. He drove it to the net, pulled defenders to him, and now the puck skips over to Kapanen and he pounds the puck in. That play with Hutson and Demidov, they're playing in the hard areas. They're not playing in the neutral zone, passing the puck around.
Yeah,
they're trying to break down opponents, and that's not easy to do. And you got to be willing to go into those demanding hard areas where you're going to have to pay a price. And that's what I mean about hard skill. Lane is unbelievably skilled. Ivan is unbelievably skilled, but they get to where it's hard and where the rewards are. And that, to me, that's what Marty did. That's what Marty did as a player.
There's starting to be, a few more players that are unbelievably skilled on this team because, of course, they had Suzuki before and they had Caulfield before, and then they had Lane Hutson, then they had Demidov, and all of a sudden you have four. You have a couple of other players. Noah Dobson can play as well. He's not the only one. All of a sudden, when you have all this creativity, all this imagination, all this skill, it could lead to plays of magic. But at sometimes you try and get a little bit too cute, maybe more cute than you are effective. Do you think this could be a challenge for Marty going forward, having all this skill in the lineup and just making sure that they continue to play the team game and don't get away from that?
Oh, Marty's not going to let that happen. It's just not in his DNA. And the bottom line is that every coach, give a coach a choice of having more skill or less skill. They're taking more skill every day of the week.
Yeah.
More skill also allows other players to I'm not going to use the word relax because it's not the right word, but it allows them to be comfortable in their own skin doing what they do best. I'll give you an example. Juraj Slafkovsky doesn't have to go and get 80 points. He can go and establish himself in front of the net. Look at the goal that he scored off the play by Dobson. I mean, that's a play where they're going cross ice and everything's going. But where does Slafkovsky? He goes right to he doesn't have to worry about having to make other plays because he's got skill around him. So his attributes, which are really good, now get to be used in a positive way. If I go back and I'll go back into history, and I'll go back to the great Canadiens teams of the 70s. They had lots of skill. They had lots of will. They were hard and everything. But Guy Lafleur played different than Mario Tremblay, who played different than Yvon Lambert, who played different than Steve Shutt, who played different than Bob Gainey. But they all worked together. And they all knew, like Bob Gainey didn't have to go going, well, geez, I got to get 30 goals because we don't have enough skill. Guy Lafleur took care of him. And Guy Lafleur didn't have to go out on the ice and go, well, geez, I'm going to have to kill penalties and, make sure we're good defensively. And Yvon Lambert's like, go play on the boards, get to the net. And all those things work together. And what it does is the individual players make the whole greater when you have more skill and you have the thinking ability. And that's what I see now. Alex Newhook's another example. I thought Alex took massive steps last year when he went back into the middle of the ice. Killing penalties, skating, using his ability. But now Alex can just be who he is, settle into who he is, be a contributor in a lot of different ways, and not think, I got to score 30. Like, just go and play and help the team win, and you're going to be really, really recognized for your contributions.
I like what you said about Slafkovsky, because for a reason that I still haven't figured out, every now and then he's a whipping boy in this city by some. And, last year he played on a line that scored more goals 5v5 than any other line in the National Hockey League. Nick Suzuki's 5'11". Cole Caulfield's probably about 5'8". Juraj Slafkovsky's about 6'3.5". He's a perfect complement. He does things on the ice that those guys can't do, and those guys do things on the ice that he can't do. If they all do their job, they could be a very dangerous line in the National Hockey League. And I think because Slafkovsky was drafted first, that, a lot of people look, well, you know what? He doesn't handle the puck great. Well, no, he's not a great handler of the puck. Well, you know what? He doesn't skate great. No, well, he's not the greatest skater in the National Hockey League. Well, you know what? He doesn't pass great. No, he's not the greatest passer in the National Hockey League. But why don't we take a look at some of the things he can do? Slafkovsky was not drafted to be the best in all those areas. He was drafted because they identified in him a guy that they thought could be a piece of the puzzle that they wanted to put together to win the championship one day. I don't know this for a fact, but I've said this before, and I'm going to continue to say it again. I think Montreal Canadiens fans and people around the National Hockey League are going to take notice more of Slafkovsky in the postseason than they will in the regular season. I believe he's going to be that kind of a player that when the going gets tough and there's less space on the ice, that you're going to see him come out even more. Having said all that, you know what? He's very good on the forecheck. He finishes his hits. Yesterday, he goes to the front of the net. He crashes the net. He goes to the front of the net, whether he has the puck. He goes to the front of the net, whether they don't have the puck. He goes to the front of the net to screen. He goes to pick up the garbage. He's willing to get his nose dirty and all that stuff. I don't understand why they don't just look at Slafkovsky and say, hey, you know what? Understand that he's not Crosby. He's not McKinnon. He's not McDavid. He's not Tavares. He's not Austin Matthews. He's not one of those guys that was drafted first overall, but he's not one of those first overall or second overall or third overall busts either. He's going to be a preeminent power forward in the National Hockey League who's going to have a good career, period. Nothing wrong with that.
Well, I mean, again, you can look at any player and say, well, they don't have this or they don't have that. I remind young players all the time, what's your calling card? What are the strengths of your game? What are your key attributes and skills? Use them and play to them. And certainly when you're the first overall pick, or your first round pick, but in the case of Uri, you're the first overall pick, you want to show everybody, hey, listen, you made the right decision. I'm the guy. I'll show you. And that's just part of their competitive nature and their competitive drive. But at the same time, You have to get players settled in, because when players start to feel that they got to do things that aren't part of their repertoire, of their toolbox, then you're getting out of your strengths. And I think, again, back to Marty St. Louis and the coaching staff, you're right. Here's where we are. You have to value all your players in different ways. I go back to Montreal, because it's easy for me to do. Lambert, Risebrough, Tremblay. That was a hard line to play against. It was a valuable line. Gainey, Jarvis, Roberts. They had Lafleur, and they had Shutt, they had Lemaire, and they had Mahovlich and everything. But everybody knew what their role was on the team. Everybody knew what they had to do. And they were celebrated and valued for that. That is a big part of coaching, Tony. It's a big part of being a good team, because it's not just about, okay, this is what I do, I scored 20. It's about Nick Suzuki knowing that what Jake Evans does is valued. It's about Jake Evans knowing that I'm valued by our captain. It's about Juraj Slafkovsky knowing that, hey, we look at Josh Anderson, and he's a guy that I value because I know he values me. And when you get that working together in unison, that's the power of the group. And that's coaching. That's making everybody feeling that their contribution is so important, because every contribution matters. And I think that you want to pick it apart, go ahead. Bottom line is, if Kent Hughes got on the phone today and phoned 31 teams and asked them if they were interested in Juraj Slafkovsky, there would not be one team that would say no.
Speaking of which, Pierre LeBrun is about 5 minutes away, by the way. Why don't we bring up a graphic? And I saw this last night regarding Slafkovsky and the goals that he scored under the age of 22. Stats Center, look at this. Most career goals players with the Montreal Canadiens franchise before turning 22. Stéphane Richer leads the way with 91. Henri Richard with 62. Mario Tremblay with 60. Bernie Geoffrion, 57. Lafleur, 57. Galchenyuk, 54. Cole Caulfield, 48. Guillaume Latendresse, 46. Juraj Slafkovsky, 45. He'll turn 22 at the end of March. Craig Button, when all is said and done, I think it's possible that he can get into that top 5, maybe even into that top 3.
I would say that, the way he plays, the way he scored in back-to-back games now, I'm talking about the Montreal Canadiens' last 2 games, and there's no reason to believe that he won't sit second on that list by the time he turns 22. He's not catching Stéphane Richer, but no. I don't think it's too much to ask for Juraj Slafkovsky to get into that 60 range and to pass both Mario and Henri Richard.
17 goals between now and March 30th. We'll keep our eye on that. The Sick Podcast is brought to you in part by Energy Transportation Group, a leading asset-light 3PL that's driven to be different from cross-border freight between Canada, USA, and Mexico to coast-to-coast shipping in both Canada and the United States. Energy moves it all. Fast, reliable, powered by tech that delivers smarter logistics. And need a real partner in transportation? Contact the team at sick@shipenergy.com and see how Energy Transportation is changing the freight game. Also brought to you in part by Playground. Hungry for a deal? Eat well at Playground without breaking the bank. Monday, sink your teeth into a juicy 12-ounce ribeye steak. All the fixings, $19. Tuesdays, dive into an all-you-can-eat Asian experience, $25. Wednesday, savor a 6-ounce bacon wrap filet mignon with dessert for just $30. Thursdays, lobster surf and turf, only $22. And Fridays, get any lunch, sandwich, pizza, burger, or main for just $7. Delicious, outrageous. Visit playground.ca for details. All right. Kirby Dach has been out of the lineup for the past couple of games. Craig with an injury, a lower body injury, they call it. We know, of course, last year he missed the last 25 games or so with the ACL injury and MCL. The year before that, also ACL, both to the same knee. Craig, you have a lot of experience with this. Would only they know, but I think these are things you got to be careful of. 2 times ACL, back-to-back seasons, probably some inflammation, some swelling. You don't want to overdo it, and I guess they want to bring him along gradually.
Yeah, I mean, Kirby's been star-crossed the last couple of years. I mean, you think about the 2 injuries and, really fluke injuries, the injury at the World Junior Tournament and the pre-tourney game when he had the wrist injury. And I call it just star-crossed right now. So you have Kirby who's got a lot of talent, but when you're constantly having to rehabilitate injuries, it's hard for you to work on the development part of your game. To work on being quicker, to work on your shot, and that's why I say it's star-crossed for him. So the organization is careful, will be careful, will be cognizant of it and everything. You would just like to see Kirby. I would like to see Kirby get to a place where his health is as close to 100 as possible so that he can go and really ply his trade and go and work at developing the rest of his game. He's still a very young player. Let's not forget how young he is as a person. And I think that give him a little bit of time, and if that's what it takes for him to get back to that level of health where he's closer to 100, if not 100%, I think that's when he can really take steps up in his game because he'll get a chance to work on his game instead of having to rehab injuries.
Patrick Laine missed 30 games last year at the start of the season with a knee injury that he also sustained in a preseason game versus the Toronto Maple Leafs. He told members of the media going into the season that he felt really good. He was enjoying hockey again, and it was the first time that he was healthy going into a season in a long time. He missed the last couple of games, and unfortunately for him, the news is not good because the Canadiens announced earlier today that he will not make the West Coast trip. Patrick Laine will not. The Canadiens earlier today recalled Mark Del Gaizo, defenseman, so that they can have 7 defensemen going on this trip, and Joshua Roy, and loaned Owen Beck back to the Laval Rocket. Craig Button, 2 questions before I let you go. 1, Joshua Roy, how many more chances is he going to get, and are you convinced that he's going to be a long-term NHLer?
Well, you know how highly I thought of Joshua. I thought Joshua was on the right track. So to answer your first question, how many more chances will he get? As many as he earns. like he can get dozens. He can have a long career if he earns them. That's where Joshua's at in his level of maturity right now. Where and it's very simple. Go and show that you can be a productive player in the NHL. Yeah. Go and do the hard things, Joshua, because he's shown that he's got the skill. Go and do. I talked about hard skill. It's interesting how we've come around to Joshua now. Go and show the hard skill. Go and get invested in your game that helps the team, and he'll get multiple opportunities. If he doesn't, he'll be back in Laval.
And that's a good point because the Laval Rocket have won their last 3 games, and they like Joshua Roy's performances, and that also merited him the call-up, of course. In ending, and this is going to be a difficult one, but Patrick Laine has had a hard time finding chemistry with any player on the team right now. And 5-on-5, it's been extremely difficult for Patrick Laine. He's out of the lineup right now. Who can he fit with on this team? Your opinion?
So here's what I think about Patrick. And I said this about Jakub Dobish and Patrick Laine. The Montreal Canadiens do not make the playoffs last year without both those players contributing in the way that they did. And I think that that's important to say. I think that Marty St. Louis has understood and found ways to use Patrick Laine at this stage of his career that allows him to help the team and be in a spot that it is. I see Patrick Laine as a specialist. He'll use him on the power play when he needs him. Yeah. He'll push him down the lineup at 5-on-5. If the game dictates that he might need a goal, he'll get a little bit more 5-on-5 time. But I'm going to go back to those 70s teams. Just go back and look at how Scotty Bowman used Pierre LaRouche. That is how, to me, and Pierre LaRouche was a 50-goal scorer. A 50-goal scorer, and he came there. There was nights he played lots. There was nights he didn't play as much. There was nights he didn't dress at all. I think Patrick Laine at this stage of his career is in exactly the same spot. But this is where this is where his touch, his personal feel, he will make Patrick feel valued for those contributions. I don't think it's about trying to find a place for Patrick. I think it's about making Patrick understand this is where you're at this point in your career, and we value it. And I think that Patrick has done a good job of accepting that from my vantage point.
Craig Button, a regular every Wednesday right here on the Sick Podcast. Thank you, Craig. We're going to make room for your colleague. You want to say hello to him?
Oh, yeah. Bonjour, Pierre. Comment ça va?
Let's have you say hello. Why don't we bring in Pierre LeBrun? There you are with the Expos, honey. This guy's the best, man. This guy's the best.
Hang on a second. This guy's
the best.
Oh, yeah? Well, if he's the best, then I'm the second best.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And here we are, Sports Podcast Studio. We don't have anything with the Expos. Just reminds me that we have to get something. You know what's the best about Craig Button, who's in Calgary, Alberta, and Pierre LeBrun, who I would imagine is in Toronto, following one of the biggest games the Blue Jays have had in 32 years. He shows up on a podcast the next day with a Montreal Expos hoodie. This guy's the best.
Well, I mean, I know my audience on your podcast, Tony. So
you're very smart. You're very smart.
And to be fair, I think the Expos a lot as the Blue Jays thrill a nation here right now. When I grew up, I was Expos, diehard, but I wanted the Blue Jays to do well as well. They were in different leagues, as we all remember, and had the dream of an Expos Blue Jays World Series, which frankly could have been 1994, but don't make me cry live here. Okay.
Yeah, I hear you.
Well, Pierre, it's good. You're taking over on the Sick podcast with Tony, and I'll go off and cry on my own because I'm still not over it. And I don't know about Tony. Tony's younger than me than me, but hey, I remember going to Jerry Park, and so it was fantastic. The Expos were phenomenal, and that team back when the strike happened was the best of baseball. And hey, Vladdy Guerrero Jr. We all know what Vladdy Guerrero Sr. did for the Expos, right? So it's only fitting we're wearing our Expos paraphernalia.
You know what? I never went to Jerry Park, but every time I go to an arena, I wish that the concession stands, the prices would be the same prices they used to have at Jerry Park. Thank you, Craig Button. We'll talk to you soon.
Good to see you, Pierre.
And good to see Pierre LeBrun. Indeed, he's brought to you by Cafe Milano's.
Pierre LeBrun, presented by Cafe Milano, because winning tastes better.
Sports commentary doesn't stop at the buzzer, neither does Cafe Milano, a true community cornerstone in Saint-Léonard with buzzing spots in Laval and Pointe-Claire. They're serving up banger sandwiches, my personal favorite being the sausage sandwich with spicy, marinated eggplants, vibrant salads bursting with flavor, and lattes and espressos that keep the energy high through overtime. Throw in a cannoli or two, and every bite is a highlight. Join the locals at Cafe Milano. We want to welcome them on board with the Sick Podcast. There was a sports card exposition, Pierre LeBrun, probably about 3 weeks ago in Laval, and we asked Cafe Milano's if they wanted to join us and hand out free coffees to everybody on that particular weekend, and they did, and they were a big hit with everyone, so much so that there's going to be that same exposition, I think, in Toronto on the weekend of the 8th or 9th or 10th, and we were invited down, so I don't know if we're going to be there, but if we do, we'll try and bring Cafe Milano's with us. Pierre LeBrun, what a huge addition you are to the Sick Podcast. I know you've known for decades how much I love your work. Everyone does. So thank you for accepting the invitation. It's an honor.
Well, don't start this by lying to my face, Tony. You don't. Come on now. I mean, you're laying it on thick there, buddy.
Not lying. Not lying.
You mentioned throw in the cannoli. I just watched The Godfather for the millionth time over the weekend. I couldn't sleep. And I love that line in the movie after they just knock someone out, and he said, "What do we do with the car? Burn the car, but bring the cannolis."
yeah. And in part 3, of course, when she goes to pay a visit, they want a guy dead. So what do? They bring him a box of cannolis, and they spike the cannoli, and he chokes on it and dies while he's watching the opera. While he was at the opera, it was amazing. Okay. The Canadiens played the Buffalo Sabres last night. There's this dream in Montreal. The dream is called Sidney Crosby, of course. So we're going to get to that, you would imagine. But before we do, if that dream doesn't materialize, there are other people who say, hey, you know what? I wouldn't mind Tage Thompson. Let's bring up his hockey DB if we can. And here you have it. Tage Thompson is a 27-year-old big man, 6'6", 220-pound centerman. Mind you, he's playing right wing now with the Buffalo Sabres, which Coolidge being a centerman. I asked Pierre Maguire about him last night. Pierre Maguire says, look, I think he's better at center than he is the wing. This is a guy who scored 44 goals a year ago, 47 goals 3 years ago, 38 goals the year before that. This is a big-time player. And because the Buffalo Sabres have been in no man's land for the last 14 years or so, and because they had the likes of a Jack Eichel that they traded away, or a Sam Reinhart that they traded away, or a Ryan O'Reilly that they traded away. Mind you, Tage Thompson came over in that deal for Ryan O'Reilly. Some people think that the Sabres might retool again, and that would make Thompson available. So my question to you is, what is the direction of the Buffalo Sabres going forward in Europe? What are you hearing?
Yeah, I can't see Kevin Adams ever trading Tage Thompson while he's still GM of the Buffalo Sabres. Because to me, if you go down that route, you're starting to set up your successor. And so it makes no sense. I mean, he's signed to a good contract. He's an incredibly important player for the Sabres. While Kevin Adams is still GM, I just don't see a world in which that could even be possible, Tony. Just being honest with you.
I'll be honest.
You're asking the question, but
yeah.
And listen, the hard thing right now around the NHL, it's not just Montreal, but there are so many teams looking for center help. It was hardly a secret Montreal that was a big off-season objective, and instead they made an excellent acquisition and top 4 Noah Dobson, but they weren't able to find that center. Well, guess who else hasn't found a young center that they wish they had traded for this summer? The Calgary Flames, the Vancouver Canucks. It's one of those things where they're hard to come by. It's why it's always better to draft and develop them than to try and overpay for them either in free agency or the trade market. But you asked me the question. I find it hard to believe that, at least under present management, that the Sabres would ever go down that route.
Speaking of the Calgary Flames, the Montreal Canadiens' next opponent, because they weren't able to find that number one centerman either, but they have a centerman in Nazem Kadri who's put up serious points, especially in the last 4 years. Is it possible that they take the decision to rebuild, and instead of adding to their center ice depth, they actually trade away their centerman, Nazem Kadri? It's a name that Maxime Lapierre brought up last night on the Sick Podcast. And he said, guys, everyone's talking about Crosby and everyone's talking about Tage Thompson, but Nazem Kadri would be more realistic, said Max Lapierre. Would he be, or no, because they're also looking for a centerman, like you said?
Yeah, I mean, listen, that one's interesting. I mean, his name's been out there a bit. The reality is, I don't think the Flames have put his name out there the last year or two, even though other people were hoping they would. But they're off to a tough start. Let's see how this season goes. I kind of saw the Flames as a candidate for a bit of regression this year. I think they were a really nice story last year. Just missed the playoffs by a couple of points, but they continue to retool that roster. You asked me, what if they rebuild, Tony? I don't think that's a mandate from ownership there in Calgary. They're not into it. They want to stay competitive. They want to have veterans around their younger players. So they see a lot of value in Nazem Kadri that way. I think it would come down to this, that as long as Nazem Kadri is happy in Calgary and he's got a no trade, that he has a lot of control over his future, Tony. But what if the day comes, if this is a tough year, and we're way early, but let's say it is a tough year for Calgary, is Nazem Kadri intrigued by a couple of teams out there at the deadline? That's the question I would have for later on this year. Obviously, it's way too early for that right now. I mean, the fact of the matter is, the priority item when it comes to the trade deadline for Calgary will be Rasmus Andersson on defense, because he is a pending UFA. The Flames made him an extension offer last summer. It was rejected. It's actually kind of surprising that he wasn't dealt in those circumstances last summer. Vegas went pretty deep in talks with Calgary on Rasmus Andersson, but both teams were unable to get a deal done. So I think that's where you'll really see the focus, is with Andersson between now and the March 6th trade deadline.
Yeah.
After that, we'll see.
Here in Montreal, obviously, Montrealers, the team that they watch the most are the Montreal Canadiens. Guess which team they're watching the most after the Montreal Canadiens, and watching their games and watching the scoreboard every night when they're playing to see if they win or lose?
Are you going to say the Pittsburgh Penguins, Tony? Is that what you're going to say?
That would be 100% correct. And very unfortunately, they're going to bed pretty disappointed more often than not, because the Pittsburgh Penguins have won 4 of their first 6 games to start the season. And look, I would have thought that Pittsburgh, and still, like you just said, the season is young. I think Pittsburgh's going to miss the playoffs when all is said and done. Mind you, when Crosby is determined to do something, you never know. They've missed the playoffs the last 3 years. You wrote a tremendous article, like you always do, in The Athletic. It was probably, 3 or 4 weeks ago, when you had a chance to talk to Sidney Crosby and you had a chance to talk to his agent, Pat Brisson, who basically said to you, anything's possible. All I'll say is, Sidney can't be missing the playoffs next year. He's already missed the playoffs 3 years in a row. Some are going to say, yeah, but he's got his 3 Stanley Cups. This guy cannot finish off. If he's going to play 2 more years in the National Hockey League, he cannot finish off. He's already missed the playoffs 3 years in a row. He cannot miss the playoffs 4 or 5 years, the final years of his career. Let's be honest. Is that what it's all going to come down to after you spoke to Pat Brisson and you spoke to Sidney Crosby? If there's someone who's got a feel of the situation better than Crosby, or just right behind Crosby and Brisson himself, it has to be you. Is that where we stand here? That if the Pittsburgh Penguins are 6 points out of a playoff spot come trade deadline, something can happen there. But if they're in the mix, probably nothing will happen there.
Well, to answer your question simply, and then I'll get into it, but there's only one human being that decides the fate of Sidney Crosby, and that's Sidney Crosby. He's in complete control over all of that. And, it's important to note that to this point, he has not even left the door open a crack that he would be interested in leaving the Pittsburgh Penguins. The reason that I wrote that story last month while I was in Vegas for the player media tour, we got the chance to interview Sid. And at the time, the specific question I asked him was how the ovation from the Bell Center crowd in Montreal touched him during the Four Nations. And he gave an excellent quote, as you read it, Tony, about how he grew up a Habs fan and that night was really special. But he's careful and not to push it past that. And I think that's important to add context here. But I could see the hamster working in my head as Crosby was answering that question, that I was going to have to write a column on all this. And so Pat Brisson was there at the event as well. And I took him aside and asked him a couple of questions, as you saw. And certainly, I think it was Pat Brisson's quotes that really lit the fire here on this story, because he certainly talked openly about the possibility of Sidney Crosby perhaps getting traded one day. And he brought up the example of Tom Brady, winning a Super Bowl with another team outside of New England in Tampa. But he also brought it up because Tom Brady played forever, and Pat Brisson thinks Sidney Crosby can play forever. So that was part of the context as well. The Habs, for sure, I mean, no one's hiding this. The Habs would absolutely go all in if they had a chance to get Sidney Crosby. I mean, everyone knows that around the league. But again, where we are today is that Sidney Crosby, I think, is being very transparent and genuine when he says he doesn't see himself leaving Pittsburgh right now. That's where he is emotionally and mentally. So until that changes, and it may never change, then it's really just you and I and other people trying to conjure up, where this could go. And listen, it's a genuine conversation. It's a conversation that people around the league are having. But Sidney Crosby, I believe him when he says that right now he doesn't see himself leaving Pittsburgh. And remember one thing, too, that unlike some legends that have left the only team they've ever played for to go chase a cup,
yeah,
he doesn't have to chase a cup. He's won 3 cups.
Yes.
So that carrot is not there like it was for Jerome McGinley, like it was for Joe Thornton and other guys that left at the end of their careers. And Ray Bourque, of course, who got his cup in Colorado. That's not part of the equation for Sidney Crosby, but it comes back to what you quoted Pat Brisson in my article, saying that his agent hates the idea of Sidney playing out his career on a non-playoff team.
Yeah.
That's the hook here, is how does everyone involved feel about that? So we'll see.
A couple of more questions here for you, one of which is going to be on Mike Matheson, another one on Nick Suzuki, because I read your piece regarding Canada. Hockey Canada have a couple of months here to put together their roster in regards to the 2026 Winter Olympics. But back to Crosby for a second, is that you think this puts the Canadiens in a difficult position, that as much as everyone knows that they need a second line centerman and they want to go out and try and acquire a second line centerman, that if in their minds, the guy that they see in their dreams is Sidney Crosby, that they might actually have to wait till the trade deadline to see what's going to happen with Crosby before they make a move or think of making a move elsewhere?
Well, I mean, honestly, it's an excellent question, Tony. In fact, you could take that a lot of different ways. I mean, you could even take it bigger picture and say, do they wait forever on Sid and not spend those assets that they would spend on Sid on another center that might be available?
Mm-hmm.
Like if the Habs trade for another center at some point, it may very well be that those are the assets they were going to use. So it's a very interesting thing that is difficult to answer. But to answer your question, I don't think it puts them in a bad spot where they're forced to wait. They're forced to wait because there's no one available right now. There's no one fitting that description who's actually available on the NHL trade market. Again, Vancouver Canucks would love to go get that guy too, right? In terms of a young center. So I don't even know if there'll be one available at the deadline.
As you can imagine, here in Montreal, Canadiens fans would love to see their players, Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield, Lane Hutson, for example, take part in the Winter Olympics. But at the same time, if they don't and they end up having 3 weeks off and they get to rest on a beach for a couple of weeks, Canadiens fans will be happy with that too.
Right.
I'm trying to make the case for Nick Suzuki this morning, and I saw this stat. If we can bring up the chart here, following the Four Nations face-off, do we have it? Following the Four Nations face-off, Nick Suzuki has more points of any player in the National Hockey League.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we have the chart, but if we don't, that's okay. But yesterday you saw him block a shot and pass the puck to Jake Evans, who scores in the empty net. At one point I thought Nick Suzuki has to improve in the face-off circle if he wants to get the attention of Hockey Canada and John Cooper. Maybe that bring that 51% he had up to about 57 or 58 if he can do that, because he might have to battle Anthony Cirelli, and Cooper's been through so many championships and so many long runs, of course, with Anthony Cirelli. Do you see, as we stand right now on the 20th of October,
mm-hmm.
do you see Nick Suzuki on or off the team? 21st of October, pardon me.
Yeah, I think he's still off, but creeping closer.
Still off, but creeping closer, right?
Yeah, I think he's really in the mix. So let's start with, I asked Doug Armstrong, the GM of the Team Canada, this question last month about, the roster they had at Four Nations and the potential turnover from it. It's a championship roster. They won the Four Nations.
Mm-hmm.
So that developed, those guys that were there at Four Nations have developed a trust factor with John Cooper and Doug Armstrong. So anyone trying to come in from the outside and steal a roster spot from a guy that won a championship at Four Nations, the tie's not good enough. You have to be better than the guy you're trying to take off that roster. And
I hear you. Yeah.
What Doug Armstrong said to me is that they did an interesting exercise after Four Nations, the management group and some of the coaches, and they found that, and they said, how many guys do you think we'll bring back for the Olympics? And they found that they had a 70 to 80% keep ratio from Four Nations. So that doesn't leaves about anywhere from 20 to 30% of newcomers.
Yeah.
Now keep in mind too that we're going from a 23-man roster to a 25-man roster for the Olympics compared to the Four Nations. So 2 extra players for every country. But I have Nick Suzuki right in that mix of players that weren't at Four Nations, with Robert Thomas, Mark Scheifele, Tom Wilson, potentially a whole different thing, different player.
Yes.
Those, but, and then the kids, and I asked Doug Armstrong about the kids last month. Connor Bedard and Macklin Celebrini weren't brought to the Olympic camp in Calgary in August because they're part of the future of Team Canada. As Doug Armstrong said, no, if we're looking at those kids, it's because we want them to make a difference in Milan. Wow. You don't have time to start being cute with your roster for Milan about having a roster spot for someone who's just soaking it in for 5 years from now at the Olympics.
Yeah.
That doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So again, Suzuki, Thomas, Scheifele, to some degree, Tom Wilson, to some degree, Wyatt Johnston. And then what do you do with Celebrini and Bedard? That to me is the group of forwards that are trying to force themselves into the conference. Well, they have forced themselves into the conference.
The answer is easy. You bring 2 Team Canadas to the Olympics, and you could probably medal with both.
Well, and who do you take off? And Tony, who do you take off? Now, we just said there are 2 extra roster spots, but who's coming off the team that won at Four Nations? Are you taking off a Seth Jarvis? Are you taking off a Travis Konechny? I mean, they're all possibilities.
Yeah.
But what do those guys do to lose their job? So it's always, I get it, especially if you're a Habs fan and you want Nick Suzuki so badly to be on that team. And frankly, he's played well enough to be on it. But the exercise is it's important to do the exercise, not just he should be on, but who you taking out.
Yeah. I think the advantage that he has is that we're talking about a centerman who, although he does not play wing with the Canadiens, could play wing at a tournament like this. And you never have too many centermen at a tournament like this, which I think is great. Pierre, I got one more question for you. This has been so much fun. Sick Podcast brought to you by Bittt Tibi. Launched their new Ultra Lager, refreshing thirst-quenching beer, perfect for those cool fall days. Only 90 calories, 2 grams of carbs, 4% ABV per can, available in a pack of 6 and 12 in grocery stores all around the province of Quebec. Ultra light and ultra refreshing. You talked about Mike Matheson about a week ago. I saw your tweet basically saying the Canadiens want to sign Mike Matheson. Mike Matheson would like to stick around, but Mike Matheson would like a long-term deal. Can you elaborate on what long-term means? Does long-term mean 3 to 4? Or does long-term mean 5 to 6?
Yeah, I don't know that I said long, but if I did, anyway, I think that the sweet spot between the Habs and Matheson's agent, Phil LeCavalier, is probably 4 or 5 years. I'm guessing the team more on the 4, the player more on the 5, but I think that's the conversation that will be had. And again, I always say start your analysis of a potential re-signing of a player with the most important question, which is there mutual interest? And the answer is yes. As I said, Mike Matheson would like to stay. Yeah. The team would like to sign him, which I don't know if that surprises some Habs fans or not because of, how crowded they're getting on the blue line and their youth. But, the Canadiens really value Mike Matheson's leadership, as you know, Tony. Like, I think even more than a lot of people realize. They really think he's an important leader on that team. And they're getting younger and younger. The youngest team in the league right now. After losing David Savard and Armia and Dvorak from last year. And they might get even younger in 2 years if Anderson and Brendan Gallagher are gone. I'm not saying they will be, but their deals are up. So,
and despite not being on the first wave of the power play or even the second wave of the power play this year, because most second wave of the power plays, they end up going with 4 forwards, and Noah Dobson's the defenseman on the second wave, and Lane Hutson's the defenseman on the first wave. He still more often than not leads the Canadiens players in time on ice. Last night versus Buffalo, he had 26 and a half minutes. And I guess the discussion to be had here is, they're going to take a look at Phil LeCavalier and the people at Cortex will probably take a look at Noah Dobson's contract, Lane Hutson's contract, and try and make a case for Mike Matheson's importance to the team. And I guess Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton are going to say, hey, everyone's going to have to leave some money on the table. And why don't you inspire yourself after John Tavares, who took the hometown discount with the Toronto Maple Leafs? So,
I think you obviously got the something there. Mike Matheson and Phil LeCavalier know that their best deal from the Habs is short of what's there July 1st in the open market. And so, but they already know that going into this negotiation. So once you accept that, no different than Jake Evans last year. He knew he was taking less. There was a better contract there for Jake Evans on July 1st. But the Habs have created this culture. Lane Hutson, amazing young leadership from him to take what he took, right? Everyone, it's funny. I was chatting with a team executive from a rival organization last Wednesday at the Board of Governors meeting in New York, and unsolicited, unprompted, Tony, he said, boy, how about Montreal and what they're doing there with their cap and the signings and so people are paying attention here to what's going on. So I think there's no question if Mike Matheson does re-sign, and I don't know if he will or not, but if he does re-sign, it'll be something where you're like, well, he could have made more next summer on the open market. No question.
Minority owner of the Seattle Kraken, Mitch Garber, last week told me right here on the Sick podcast, on the French version, Le Sick podcast at 10 o'clock in the morning, weekdays, that he believes that out of all the GMs in the National Hockey League, no GM has done a better job than Kent Hughes. That's a minority owner of the Seattle Kraken who's saying that. And I think he said it respectfully towards his general manager as well. But he said, I've been looking at Kent Hughes' body of work, and I ask myself if he's made a bad move. I don't think you can do a better job than he has done thus far. So,
and by the way, I don't think this got as much attention that maybe, but I mentioned this on Insider Trading last week. Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes signed extensions last week. My understanding, now I don't know what he signed for, but my understanding from talking to other people around the league that Kent Hughes left a little money on the table with his new deal. But in other words, if you're going to preach it to your players, you have to do it yourself. And Kent Hughes probably had the leverage because of this successful rebuild to get into a higher tier of the GM salaries. And my understanding is he didn't try to do that.
Yeah. Built a pretty nice cushion for himself too, but then again, you always want to get as much as you can.
Yeah.
So I asked your prediction regarding Suzuki before, and I'll ask you this. Much like Lane Hutson wanting to be here long term, and Caulfield who had signed the contract extension before him, and Slafkovsky had signed the long term contract extension before him, and Caden Gooley had signed the 5-year deal before him, and Gorton and Hughes also signing 5-year contract extensions with the Montreal Canadiens. On October 21st, if I were to ask you, when all is said and done, do you think Mike Matheson will sign a contract extension with the Montreal Canadiens? What would your answer be today?
Yes. I think he wants to stay. It's his hometown. there's something special going on here with this team, and I think he wants to stay part of it.
Pierre LeBrun, the best free agent signing in the entire National Hockey League, did not go to any team. It went to the Sick Podcast with Pierre LeBrun. Thank you very much for this honor. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you again next week on Wednesday.
Look forward to our chats, Tony. Thanks, bud.
There you have it. And once again, Pierre LeBrun brought to you by Cafe Milano's. And we want to really welcome Cafe Milano's again to the Sick Podcast. They're a brand new sponsor as well. Our sponsors are absolutely amazing, from Energy Transportation Group, who have been with us almost since the beginning. Bittt TV, just a little bit, I think, before them, almost since the beginning. Betway is a major sponsor. And, of course, Cafe Milano and Souvlaki Authentique, who brought you Craig Button. The Canadiens and the Calgary Flames tomorrow night. Who's going to win? Go all the way with Betway. Get a deposit matchup bonus up to $300 in your first deposit. Scan the QR code on the screen or click on the link in the details section to create an account. Redeem your welcome offer. Offer is only available for new customers. Terms and conditions apply. Offers not available in Ontario. Must be 18 years of age and older. And please play responsibly. I hope you like the brand new studio. Thank you very much for watching. If you like the podcast tonight, leave us a 5-star review. It's our way of feeling the love. Click on the like button. Like. And if you see the hype button at the bottom, hype it up as well. Tell your friends about it, your family, your relatives, everybody. Le Sick Podcast, du lundi au vendredi à 10h le matin, and the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro, weeknights at 10 p.m. in English as well. 10 in the morning, 10 at night, inspired by my childhood idol, le numéro 10, number 10, le démon blanc, Guy Lafleur. Talk to you again tomorrow night after the Canadiens and the Flames, an 8:30 start. We'll be on at around 11:15 p.m. You're probably going to say, it's too late. Marinaro's got to sleep. He works here, there, and everywhere. I'll be back tomorrow night, and Pierre Maguire will join me. I'll be there. He'll be there. You be there, too. À demain soir, tomorrow night. Ciao for now.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. Laval.tb, embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.